Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. We both had Houston number 2 in our post-spring Big 12 football power rankings. Today we're looking position-specific at defensive ends in the Big 12, the top 5 players at each position. You can also catch later on today our newcomer series. We touched on wide receivers in terms of the top 5 portal additions or newcomers in the Big 12. That airs at 4 Eastern, 3 o'clock Central later on today right here on the channel. So defensive ends, a lot of turnover in the Big 12, a ton of guys drafted. As we assemble our list, just what do you think was the overarching theme?
Transfer portal. All 5 of my top 5 defensive ends are transfer portal additions to their school. So the Big 12 lost a ton in terms of edge rush, but gained a ton as well. And look, David Bailey and Arello Height were 2 transfers. So a year ago, it would have been the same story.
Yeah, well said. All right, number 5, who do you have?
My list, looking at the top 5 defensive ends in the Big 12, I kind of went off the board here a little bit, and I'm taking a leap of faith at a guy I'm really excited to see, and that would be Arizona State pass rusher Kirtland Vakalahi. 6'5", 265-pound defensive end from Queensland, Australia, who committed to Arizona State in November out of New Mexico Military Institute. Ranked as the number 8 JUCO transfer and number 3 defensive lineman in the 2026 class. He is the younger brother of Laken Vakalahi, an offensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad. But look, this is a young football player in his football journey in terms of a guy that grew up playing rugby and is new to the sport of football. But in 2 seasons at the New Mexico Military Institute, he recorded 35 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks, earning second-team preseason All-American honors from JC Gridiron. Here's what I like about him the most. So there's a lot of noise out of Arizona State that Clayton Smith is moving to wide receiver. Clayton Smith would be on this list, but his move to wide receiver to me says that what Arizona State has brought in through the portal at defensive end, they like a lot, and I like this guy a lot.
Sorry, they're moving a defensive end to wide receiver?
Yes.
Only Dillingham.
Well, and I guess at this point there's sort of confusion over, how much he's going to play on either side. But he's listed on the Arizona State website as an athlete, and he's been running with the wide receivers.
I'm here for it. All right, number 5 for me is
By the way, 6'5", 255-pound wide receiver.
Wide receiver. That would be big for a tight end. That dude's huge. All right, number 5 for me is a returner from TCU. TCU low-key has a really nice defensive line coming back. Paul Oyewale. Oyewale. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So this will be his 4th year on the field at TCU. Remember, he missed the 2024 season the entire year due to an injury after he started 8 games in 2023. Well, he bounced back in a big way last year. Played in all 13 games, had a career-high 31 tackles, had 7.5 TFLs, had 2 sacks. He had a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and he had 7 tackles in TCU's Alamo Bowl overtime upset of USC, probably his best game of the year. So he's got 27 total games over 4 years under his belt at TCU. I think he's poised to break out in 2026. There were reports that he was going to enter the portal. Instead, he announced his return to TCU right after the bowl game back in January. So I've got him at number 5.
Number 4 for me is the Iowa State transfer defensive end, Isaac Terrell from Washington State. Terrell led Washington State last year in sacks and tackle for loss. He had 7 sacks and 12 TFLs as a junior, playing in 12 games with 6 starts. He also forced a fumble. He batted down a pass and recorded 6 quarterback hurries. He was named the Pac-12 Defensive Lineman of the Year last year, so he transfers to Pullman, to Ames from Pullman, along with Jimmy Rogers. Isaac Terrell, the Iowa State pass rusher, number 4 on my list.
I feel like our top 5 in all these series, it's just a giant bingo card. And we finally hit, because I have Isaac Terrell at number 4 as well.
Wow.
The Iowa State edge rusher who transfers from Washington State. And reports out of the spring is that he's been their most solid guy on defense. said that he really stands out. The defensive coordinator, Jesse Bobbitt, said that, some of the questions that they had during kind of this transition have been answered in a major positive way because of his leadership. One of 14 players to come from Washington State with Coach Jimmy Rogers to Ames, Iowa. I've got Isaac Bobby Terrell at number 4.
All right, number 3 for me is the Kansas State transfer from Oklahoma State, Wendell Gregory, the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. And how many games did Wendell Gregory play last year?
Not all of them.
Yeah. And yet, despite that, he's the Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. 27 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, most of any FBS freshman, 4 sacks, 7 quarterback hurries, a pass breakup, and a forced fumble. His 32 pressures ranked inside the top 10% of all edge rushers in college football last year. Guy's an absolute beast. Huge addition for Colin Klein. Number 3, Wendell Gregory from Kansas State.
Love it. All right, I've got a portal addition at number 3 as well, but it's not Gregory. It is Adam Trick, Texas Tech, 6'4", 250, signed with Miami of Ohio out of Huber Heights, Ohio. He redshirted in 2022, and then in 2023 he played in 13 games, but mostly on special teams. Broke out the last 2 seasons, 37 stops in 24. Last year he had 59 tackles, double-digit TFLs, almost 10 sacks, first-team All-MAC, and Pro Football Focus graded him 8th highest among all edge defenders in college football, in the same company as David Bailey and John Henry Daly and some of these others like first-round picks in terms of his pass rushing grade. So I've got Adam Trick at number 3.
Number 2 for me is Trey White. Not the former Kansas basketball player, but the San Diego State transfer who was first-team All-Mountain West twice. 47 tackles last year, 7 sacks, 10.5 tackles for loss. Big-time player here, and one of 2 Texas Tech players to make my list.
One of 2 Texas Tech players. It's a tease. That's a tease. Number 2 for me is a different Trey. Trey Smith from Arizona, who only had 7 tackles last year, only had 1 TFL because he only played in the first 4 games. He suffered a season-ending rotator cuff injury in early October. He had surgery that same morning that the injury was announced. He's out for the year. So he has received his waiver for a 6th year of college eligibility. He's played over 1,600 career snaps at Arizona. And I just want to remind people of how good he was when he was healthy 2 years ago. Started all 12 games, had over 50 tackles, had 8 TFLs, had 5 sacks. He is a high-level, productive defensive end for Arizona. He was their best defensive lineman last year prior to the injury. And so for them to still be that strong defensively, I think he has another kind of bounce-back season. He's been through this type of stuff before and proven that he can bounce back. He had a similar injury in high school. I've got Trey Smith, number 2.
Yeah, great call on Trey Smith there, a guy that's kind of become forgotten. But, yeah, you're right. A couple of years ago, he was one of the best in the Big 12. Adam Trick is my number 1, the Texas Tech transfer, the best credentialed returning edge rusher coming back to the Big 12 with 67 pressures, 4th most in all of FBS, 59 tackles, 12.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, an interception. He earned a 91.2 PFF overall grade, 8th among all FBS edge players. And he's got 18 tackles for loss and 13 sacks over the last 2 seasons. Adam Trick, big-time player for the defensive end position for Texas Tech. And 2 guys in Trey White, Adam Trick, that are trying to become first-round draft picks after spending a year at Texas Tech. We shall see.
And I think we're splitting hairs with our top 3. So many new, fresh faces on this list. Number 1 for me is where I have Wendell Gregory. What he did last year at Oklahoma State, he had 4 sacks, the most by any Division I FBS freshman. Finished with 27 tackles and 12 TFLs. Big 12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. And like his numbers maybe weren't as impressive as the pedigree or the esteem that opposing coaches held him at. He finished inside the top 10 of all edge rushers nationally in pass rushing grade. Pro Football Focus had him 13th in the country. So he's going to Kansas State. He's got 3 years of eligibility, former high 4-star recruit, top 10 linebacker at the time out of high school. But then I was thinking, like Oklahoma State, they're getting boat raced, right? So to have all those TFLs and all those sacks when opponents don't have to throw the football because they're just gashing Oklahoma State on the ground, I think says a lot about his pass rushing ability to have the type of year he did for a school and a team that went 1-11 last season.
Well
Started
said.
his career at South Carolina.
By the way, on Clayton Smith, he did end up at the final week of spring practice returning with the defensive ends. Quote, Kenny Dillingham, he may bounce over for some certain situations on offense, but otherwise will remain on defense for the rest of camp. Quote, I think he knows the offense enough. If we threw him in there, like small packages throughout the year, he would understand the vernacular enough that it wouldn't be foreign to him. But we need him back on the D-line. His edge on the D-line is something we need, end quote. Probably a guy that should have made our list. I just was unsure of what his situation was. Looks like it's a guy that we're going to see as a primary defensive end, obviously based on his production, but also potentially on offense, the wide receiver position in different situations.
I mean,
very interesting.
I love the storyline. He's not listed as a defensive end on the Our Lads depth chart, which nobody better in terms of posting like updated depth charts. The other like hidden gem that I found going through this exercise, UCF maybe has the most fascinating prospect in the Big 12 on their roster, and he's expected to start at defensive end. Bruno Dahl. He is 6'7", 6'7", 260 pounds. 6'7", 260, a transfer from Akron. He was third-team All-MAC this past season at Akron. He had 9 TFLs, 4 sacks, but he's originally from Hamburg, Germany. He grew up playing overseas in that Euro League that a former offensive lineman, the kid that we talked to at Big 12 Media Days that had that thick German accent, he grew up playing NFL or playing football in Europe, I should say. They've got another German. He's an edge rusher for UCF, 6'7" from Akron.
Yeah, and you know, we're starting to see more and more of the international influence in football. You know, there's a kid from Georgia Tech who the Bears drafted in the 6th round this year from South Africa who's a former rugby player, Vandenberg. So, you know, a lot of these guys, especially Vakalahi, that we talked about at Arizona State, you know, grew up maybe playing different sports, rugby, and then seeing where that translates. There's been a lot of success of former rugby players internationally that are having success playing football. So, you know, it's only going to make the sport better if the, you know, prospect pool is as deep as it's becoming.
Well, and there's a lot of hidden gems at this position that are unknowns because it's just flooded with transfers.
Yeah. No, this will be a very interesting position group in the Big 12 overall. There's no dominant force. You know, I think last year it was obvious that David Bailey was going to be the best defensive end in the Big 12. I don't know if it was obvious he was going to be as good as he ended up being, but I certainly think we knew. I think right now, like, there's probably guys on this list that could end up becoming the best pass rushers that we didn't even put on our list.
Totally. Elijah Hill for K-State, led Conference USA as a true freshman in sacks from Kennesaw State. James Williams down at Oklahoma State is a transfer from Florida State where he was productive. Like, he started 5 games, he played in 12. He was a former 4-star recruit. The other one that I had was Ethan Day, transfer from North Texas, who will be at Utah and projected to be their top edge rusher. He had a huge year last year for North Texas. And then West Virginia, quietly, a transfer from Coastal Carolina, who's 6'5", 290, Zeke Durham Campbell, had 40 tackles, was part of the third-team All-Sun Belt, had 38 pressures last year. So he'll be a huge part of that front for West Virginia. Like, it's spread, I think, pretty evenly across the board in the Big 12 when it comes to this position and all the unknowns, to your point. All right, coming up next year on Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, we play a little Valid or Void before Justin Williams joins us, senior writer from The Athletic. That's coming up around the corner. We are powered by Modelo on this Wheels Off Wednesday exclusively on TuneIn.